Hi, welcome to the Pursuit of Truth. So two things I wanted to talk about. One was Russell Brand's, I think it's actually yesterday or the day before's video that's in the companion to the Pursuit of Truth. He was making some points about changes that the ONS are making, how they calculate the estimates of excess death. I didn't know they were estimates. I thought they were actually raw data. I mean, they get the raw data. Why are they using estimates? But, I mean, I can see why because this may be a non-story in a way. I can see what Russell Brand is talking about, changing the formulation or maths to bring down estimations. But then I guess if it's estimations and the accuracy of the formulas for the estimations are inaccurate, I mean, estimations are just estimations, so that's not such a great thing. If it was, they're calculating a different way to see what is excess deaths, to mitigate it, to make it seem lower, which is what they seem to be doing, but it's to do with estimates. So I don't know, because I listened to it, and then when I realised it's estimates, it was like, well, it's not, estimates are estimates. I mean, I don't know why, like I said, why are they dealing with estimates? Because they have all the data coming in, surely. What would be interesting, I guess, to see would be to see the estimates versus the actual data, or do they not bother to? Maybe that's the case. That's that they don't actually ever get to the actual data, and they just deal in estimates, which, of course, they could be wholly inaccurate. And like you say, they've changed the figures now because they were too high. And so, it's very Orwellian in the way that, when Winston is changing the newspaper articles to fit the current day, he's historically changing things to make it look better. So it reminds you of that, which is what Russell Brand was talking about. But I mean, it does just show, what they say, that old maxim of lies, damn lies and statistics. They can't always be trusted, because depending on the agenda you want to get for them and who's, what formulas, you can make anything come out of anything. I suppose it's another example of the system not really working for the benefit of humanity, in the fact that, you can just turn around and say, well, we've got this problem, or how we're going to solve this problem? Well, we're going to change the formulas, and now we don't have a problem. Well, we do, it's just you're not reporting on it truthfully anymore, which is what Russell Brand is talking about in when he's talking about the ONS. I think it was based on a Telegraph newspaper article. It was quite an interesting video, though. Nevertheless, the sort of bureaucracy of administration of government, and how easy it is to manipulate things and change things when you have the power to do that, and you're the ones, with the ability to do it. And therefore it makes you wonder, as the little people looking on, how do we trust what we're told when, things can be manipulated in that way? But like I say, what I'd really be interested in is actual figures, because estimates are estimates. That's, it depends how great you are at calculating. I mean, why would you be calculating estimates of excess deaths anyway? Unless it's, I don't really know what it really means by that. Because if they're getting the data for how many people die, like they used to have the COVID data. We know that ONS always, every year, have these surveys of how many people died of all these different things. You can look on their website and find all this stuff. I remember a few years back I was looking that up. That this amount of people died of heart disease, this amount died of cancer and all this kind of thing. And they always have an excess death, where I assume that's, well, what is that? That's where more people died than they were expecting, or they don't know what they died of. I don't really know what excess death really is to mean, but because I assume everyone, when they die, they give a reason for it. But I suppose it means based on how many people they expect to die a year. Maybe that's what it's talking about, that, that normally last year 10,000 people say died. Well, probably a lot higher than that, obviously. That's probably a month's figures. 10,000 people died in the UK, and this year we expect 12,000. So there's an excess of 2,000. So is it that they're talking about? I don't know, but it was interesting anyway, nevertheless. So yeah, I'll put the link in there, and it's also in the Companion for Pursuit of Truth playlist on this channel. And this one interested me as well. It was about not the actual subject, but the actual bigger subject of it. They were talking about, I think, the Raws, should they apologise to when they're going to the Caribbean, about slavery and those kinds of issues. The debate was really interesting. It was interesting how, obviously they had both sides on there to try and argue this point, a historical point, but it's sort of that idea of that, the people of today don't have to take the sins of the father, as it were, which I get from a yes, obviously the people of today wouldn't have done the things that their fathers or forefathers did, but the fact still remains that the generation now have benefited from those things that were done in the past, i.e., the people that were moved, the slavery, the building of infrastructure and all this stuff, the wealth that families have got based on their past dealings with slavery and inhumane ways, that now that those elite, as it were, I'm not talking about everyone, but those ones that dealt within that and that have made money off that, then their generation now, even though they wouldn't have done what they done, they are living off the benefit of that. And obviously the people who, as families, who are, who have had input in that, but didn't, the slaves, they're not getting any benefit, their generation. So yes, it's easy to sort of say, like this woman saying, well, I didn't do it, so why should I have to apologise or have reparations for that? But the fact is that there will be people who are living on estates, who are living on companies that were built on this stuff, and they wouldn't have been that successful if it wasn't for this free labour, as it were, this inhumane way of treating our fellow human beings. And it brings us back to the subject that I always talk about in the Pursuit of Truth, that we're all one. We're all human beings, we're all one species. Look at the terrible things that we've done to each other and are still doing to each other. And yet we can point at one part of history and say, look how bad we were, without forgetting that we're still doing it to each other. We're still segregating from each other and still treating each other or supporting people who are treating each other badly. We're all human beings. We should be living harmoniously in a betterment for humanity, in a way that we can all have a great existence, the one existence that we get. Anyway, I thought it was an interesting debate, so I thought for prosperity I'd put it on the Pursuit of Truth here.
Transatlantic slave trade, Imad Asian anti-racism activist, and Reem Ibrahim, communications officer at IEA.
Good to see both ladies make your case. Yes, well, ultimately, I think that when we're looking across history, that empires are a fundamental part of our history. They were the fundamental part of world order. And if we're thinking about this within the wider context, King George III himself in the 1750s argued for the abolition of slavery. He argued that it was immoral. We know that Queen Victoria, for example, was incredibly kind to the Muslim community in the United Kingdom. And so ultimately, when we're looking throughout history, it's very difficult to actually make these specific arguments for who should be paying reparations. I'm half Moroccan. Should the Moroccan kingdom be paying reparations to Cornish people for the Barbary slave trade? It's very difficult to actually pin down where these arguments should be lying and actually where these reparations or these apologies should be kept.
For the government.
I appreciate that. So I think that you've actually answered your original point in terms of King Charles. This is the man who is obviously head of state, head of the Church of England, and ultimately decided to commission the first monarch to commission a report into the royal family's links into the slave trade. So this is a man who was very much centered around equality, right? So this is a good thing. In terms of who should pay it, that's ultimately your point. Well, it starts with King Charles, let's just be clear. The monarchy advocated and benefited from the slave trade. We're talking 3.4 million people that were transported from the African continent into the Americas and the Caribbean, 450,000 of which died during the process. Monarchy advocated and benefited from that. We also have the fact that the slave owners were compensated, so people like you, people like me, paid as taxpayers for the slave owners' declaration or agreement that was sorted out 400 years ago in the past. And yet, me, as a descendant of the slave trade, my mum, as a descendant of the slave trade, and my granny, as a descendant of the slave trade, paid for the slave traders in terms of compensation. So in terms of where this compensation comes from, to answer it, King Charles first, the whole 3.4 million, right? Second, institutions that benefited. We have Lloyd's of London. I'm pretty sure that they committed to 52 million in regards to programs centered around Black initiatives and Black excellence in regards to employment, etc., etc. So basically, moral of the tale, repair the damage that has been done. And then, of course, we need to take into account that King Charles played a role, the monarchy, many institutions such as the Church of England and Lloyd's. And then, of course, sorry, Kate, I just have to add one more thing. The legacy of the slave trade still remains, Rima. You know this. Racism still remains. And then, of course, we also have to contend with the fact, and I'll just add, no problem, I'll just add, we never got an apology.
Okay.
We never got an apology. After all of that, the murder, rape.
Imam, you're sort of talking about people like you, people like me today.
Right wing.
We were not around 400 years ago during the slave trade. King Charles is not personally responsible. Nobody today is personally responsible for the slave trade. And I hear your point, and I hear the fact that racism still exists today, and many of the institutional difficulties that we see today stem from these historical grievances.
Yes, thank you.
However, nobody today caused the slave trade.
Yeah.
Nobody alive today financially benefits from the slave trade today. And so I think it's incredibly, I think, disingenuous to actually look at these arguments and actually say that we can trace back exactly who benefited, where benefited.
But we can.
No, we cannot.
Rima, so let me just give you this one point, and I know we're running out of time. I'll just say this one thing. Firstly, the British Empire took away our culture as Black people, our mother tongue, our language, and most importantly, our surnames. You know me as Iman Aiton. That is not my African name. I am half Nigerian, half African. So you want to talk about the past, Rima? It may not occur to you. You are able to dismiss it because it doesn't affect you directly, but it affects me. My name is Iman Aiton. So every single day I write my name, Iman Aiton. Every single day I have to talk on TV, Iman Aiton. Aiton is a slave owner name. It is not my
your mother tongue, and that's, I think it's brilliant that you today.
No, you get it.
It's brilliant
so
that you today.
You want to forget about the past. I can't forget about the past because we still feel it
I didn't
today.
say forget about the past.
We feel it today.
What I am saying is that you today can now sit on Sky News and talk about the impact of slavery.
Whilst paying for slave owners. I paid off slave owners.
Okay, so slave owners, no slave
2015.
owners. No slave owner from the Atlantic slave trade is alive today. None of them.
But yet I paid as a descendant of slaves 400 years later, Rima. So I know you think you have a point, but you don't have a point because I contributed to the compensation of slave owners up until 2015. My mum paid, I paid, and my granny paid, and we are all descendants of slaves. So I, as a slave,
let's have a conversation without talking over each other.
We are. I have to just make sure.
Ultimately, so we're talking about the Atlantic slave trade.
Yes,
slavery has occurred across the world throughout various different empires. As I said, I'm half Moroccan. I'm a North African girl, and these countries themselves have also been partially responsible for the Barbary slave trade, for example. Yeah. So should the Moroccan kingdom be paying reparations to the Cornish people or people on the coast of France? Ultimately, slavery, unfortunately, was a huge part of history and a huge part of historical world order. We cannot trace back all of those links.
No, we can.
No, we cannot.
You. I just explained to you.
No one today is responsible for the Atlantic slave trade.
All right, so that's not a problem. I'm not negating the fact that
we cannot blame King Charles today for the Atlantic slave trade 400 years ago.
Right, but this is the same individual who decided to commission a report into his family links into the slave trade, which happened 400 years ago. Yes. The same with the Church of England, the same with Lloyd's TSB. So we can talk about, Lloyd's of London rather, not TSB. So we can talk about all of these different institutions, but the reality is they are trying to repair the damage that was done from slavery, repair the damage that we as Black people still have to to contend with to this day in terms of, let me finish. Rima, let me finish, because you said you didn't want to interrupt. Let me finish. Thank you. So I'm not talking about separate things. We're talking about the legacy. The legacy is still felt to this day, 400 years later, in terms of racism. Just to break it down for you, the National UK Equalities Survey stated that 49% of Black Africans, 49% of Black Caribbeans, 35% of Black Africans, and 61% of other Black, including other Black British, have all experienced racial assault. So moral of the tale is we are still contending with the legacy this day. So therefore, let me bring it back to your original point that we can't trace it back. We can. My surname is Aiton. I can trace that back to Scottish. So moral of the tale is, if there is evidence, go get your justice.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay.
But if there's evidence, the British Empire was meticulous.
Thank you, Emma. Okay.
Recording everything in
Thank you, Emma.
That's
the final thought from you, please, if you may.
Thank you. Because the evidence is there.
You're talking very specifically about the British Empire. This is a very element, a huge part of.
We live in Britain and we're talking about the British Empire.
Huge part of historical world order. You're talking about two very separate things.
No, we're not.
King Charles has commissioned this.
He's the head of state and head of the Church of England and
I didn't talk over you. He's commissioned a report in order to look into his family's historical links into slavery.
Yes, so what's...
And that does not... No, that does not...
You're making a moot point, Rima. So what's your point?
I didn't interrupt you.
Right.
I didn't interrupt you.
Okay, so go ahead.
10 seconds before we're off air. He's commissioned this report. That is very separate to having to pay fiscal reparations.
But the whole point is to find out why he should pay. That's the whole point of doing a report.
Very heated conversation. We must leave it there for now. We'll be back in just a few moments' time here on Sky. Do stay tuned.
I thought it was quite interesting, but it's just interesting how you can get two arguments and then just, I don't know, you can just end up in an argument basically. I don't know, just I can see what both were saying, but the fact is, and I wonder whether is it Rima? I can't remember who she worked for, but I wonder if it's a government funded thing that she works for, because I found that in life, when there's things that are funded by government, the people working for them tend to be very pro-government. You know, obviously no one in the government really wants to pay reparations or admit their links to terrible things in the past. Yes, I know that they're saying King Charles I third, or whatever he is, has done this report to see his family links. I mean, I think quite, I don't know if he needs to really do a great report. I mean, we all know about the historical legacy of the royals and slavery being the head of state, and commissioning all commissioning all these expeditions to other parts of the world. But it's just, I don't know, it's just, even in today, people can't agree on the fact that, yes, I mean, no one's saying it didn't happen, is it? We all know it happened. We all know there was slavery, and whether it was around the world as well, that doesn't matter. All slavery should be treated as slavery. If anyone was culpable of slavery, they should then have to, well, I assume do a few things. You know, apologise would be the obvious first, but an apology is easy. Anyone can say sorry, isn't it? There are maybe financial repercussions for doing that. That's why a lot of people don't say sorry, is because of the repercussions of doing that, or the how it puts on your image. But the truth is the truth, and why are we hiding from the truth? The other thing would be to set it right. That's the big problem, and that's why usually they don't apologise, because they don't want to set it right, because setting it right is, well, how do you do that? Either you could do that by money, which is a huge amount of money. How do you calculate how much money, how many generations have had to suffer because of this? How would you work that figure out? And putting it right also means maybe, well, if some land was taken from someone and given to someone else, then now it's owned by somebody else, how do you get that back to the person that it should have been given to? How do you give back the lives that were taken away, the names that were taken away, the cultures, the whole identities, all the things, the bad things that come with slavery that happened? How do you put it right? I don't think it is possible to put it right, is it? Because unfortunately the genie's out of the bottle and things have all changed. And, you know, like, It's the same way you could say for the indigenous people of the Americas or the indigenous peoples of Australia. Sorry for the cough. If you were to say that, that how would you give them back their land now? Because now generations after are now living on it. It's so difficult, and I get it. But you can't sort of pretend that, oh wow, it's in the past, so, an apology should just be enough and we should all be thankful for that. And I don't know. Anyway, I thought it was really interesting, the debate. I guess the debate rages on. Take care, take it easy, God bless, and peace.